One second while I see it. Okay, so now we are recording. So let's go ahead and start over real quick, and we'll go over the GIMP interface. So as you can see, this is the main interface. This is our primary photo editing app currently. So here we have the top menu. This is your file, edit, select, view, image, layer, colors, tools, filters, windows, and help. So obviously, you know, your file is you're opening your files, your prints, and all that. Editing is just fills, copy, paste, that sort of thing, and so on. And here we come in, we have filters. So this allows us to add effects or other image manipulation effects to our pictures. And we also have other tools. So being able to select colors, measurements, zooming in and out. And we'll go over that in a little more depth in a minute. And then here we have our general tools. So like your move, your selection, your brush tools, which are here. So like I said before, we can, in our fills also. And I'll show you some of the brush options also so that we can kind of get a hang of learning how to paint. So in here, say we have our brushes, we come and click on the color palette, and we can edit any of the colors that we want. And then here we have our brush options, which affects the size of the brush. As you can see, we have small brushes to a much larger brush. We can adjust, so we have things like aspect ratio and angle, but we won't get into those today. And we have other options like spacing, which allows us to create patterns and such. Or we can also lessen that for a more smooth effect. We have hardness, so as you can see, these are very fine lines here on the outside of the brush, and then we can bring that down to soften that effect, and that would be more noticeable if I increase the size of the brush. And you can see how it's much softer around also. And that's where our options are for each of these tools. So today, what we're going to use is primarily a couple of filters, and we're going to learn how to use the healing brush, which allows us to blend scenes and images together. Here in the middle, obviously, this is where our main subject is. This is any kind of image that we'll be correcting or working on or altering. And then further over to the right is our brush effects and our patterns. Further down, we have our layer editor here. This is where I stack our images to be able to build our composites. And then right down here are these layer options. And we'll get into that a little bit as we go. So first we're starting off with our panoramic. So if you have that available, you can go ahead and open it. For those who don't worry, we'll get you guys squared away. Are there any questions up to this point about the interface? Okay, then we'll proceed. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create kind of what's a little planet, okay? So the first filter we're going to use is filters, map. We'll create a little planet. Now here, what we've done is we've taken this image and we've created it in 360 degrees. So now this will allow us to do lots of little things. So here we can pan, tilt. We can spin that object just a little more. And then we'll say, okay. So now it's like its own little planet. So for navigating, well, let me step back. So if we want to navigate this image, we can hold our middle mouse button to move it around. Control will zoom it in. Okay? So now back to the image. So now that we've spun around this image, what you can do is you can see that we have a scene right here. And what we want to do is we want to get rid of that image. We want to get rid of that scene, I mean. So this is where we come into the healing brush. And it looks like kind of like a little band-aid up here. And what we do with this is, let me go back to this brush here. We're going to do what's called a sampling. And what that means is we sample a portion of the image to blend into another part of the image. So when we hold Control and click, what you'll see is it leaves a little dot there. And what I'm telling this tool is that I want to sample from this space, and I want to affect, and with this brush, I'm going to affect this line. So now that goes away. So now we've gotten rid of that scene. And this is kind of one of the first steps in photo manipulation. So whenever we want to remove blemishes or add features, like say if we want to add more hair to someone, or if we want to add flowers to an object, we can clone these items using this tool. And there's also another tool called the stamp tool that we can do that same effect with. But the heal tool is a little more friendly for heavier contrast images like so. So now that we have that, we also have this large scene here that we want to get rid of. So for that, I'll increase my size. And again, because I want to blend these two, I want to select a color. And the heal brush is smart enough to know that it's going to sample from a little bit of everything and blend it in smoothly. So we'll sample. And then we'll take the heal brush and we'll blend it in, just like that. So we might want to also increase that size, lessen the hardness just a little bit, and I'll blend it in just a little more to make it go away. And then and as you can see, it also catches the patterns. So you can see I can duplicate certain things also. So if I say select this, I can come over here. Let me see where it went. You can clone also. So if I select this tool here, copy, so we'll do like Control C, Control V, or edit, copy, and we can paste. And then what I'll do is this little green button, and this is the first step in our layer editor. You'll see that it says floating selection, pasted layer. From here, it needs an action in order to be able to be editable. So what we'll do down here is we'll hit this green button. It says create new layer from this effect. And we'll say okay. And now we can actually move this cloud over if we want. Now if we want to blend this more into the sky, there's a couple of ways we can do it. We can use the heal brush again and sample part of the picture and blend it in. Or we can fade it using the erase tool. And what we'll do is we'll lessen the hardness, increase the size, and then we can just gently take away the edging, like so. So those are the first two kind of big steps in photo manipulation. And as you can see, it's fairly seamless. So now that we've got this primary image, there's a number of things we can do. So, but today what we're going to do is we're going to composite this over another image to give it more of a layered effect. So is everyone up to speed so far? Let me know if I've gone too far. Please feel free to unmute your mic at any time and ask a question. Okay.
It still won't let me, so I'm just watching.
Okay. We'll get that worked out for you. So now we're going to take this image and we're going to composite it over another image. So what I'll do is I'll take my selection tool here, and what I'll do is I will select it, and by holding shift, I keep it in a perfect circle. Okay. So I'll take this, I'll move this selection over. Okay. So now I will copy, and I will come over to, say, the flower image, and I'll paste. Now always remember, in the layer editor where it says floating selection, pasted layer, you always want to hit this little green button that says create a new layer. And now it's there. And what we can do from this point on is we can move this image over. But what I want to do is I want to, in the layer editor over here where it says opacity, this is what makes it transparent or see-through. We can lower that just a little bit. We can move the object, and we'll put this in the center of the flower. And then from here, what we'll do is we will manipulate this using the Unified Transform tool. And in our options, you can see we have our constraints. So where it says constraint shift, and that's the scale. And then from the pivot, we also have these other options. So here, I'm going to choose scale. I'm going to click on this, and what it'll do is it'll give me a transform box here. Now, remember, we have tooltips here. So to constrain it, we have shift, or from the pivot, or where the center point is right here that I'm hovering over. This is your pivot. So this is the center of the image. So if I want to scale, shear, or alter it in any other way, using the control key, that will happen from the pivot. Using the shift key, that will happen from the corner here. So if I hold control, I can shrink that like so. I'll center this up just a little more. And I'll drop that tool by just selecting another tool. Now what I'll do is, similar to what I did with our erase tool, I'll shrink that size down just a little bit, and I'll take away the edging, like so, to kind of blend this in. From here, I will increase the opacity, and you can see how it's sort of blending in with the flower. Now, one of the neat things about the layer editor is that we also have effects that can be applied to the layer. So if I zoom in this just a little bit, we can add different effects here in our layer editor, like dissolve, and you can see it kind of dissolves the edges just a little bit. You know, and all of these do something different. We can lighten it, so now it has a more of a color effect over the pollen on the flower. We can do an overlay, which, depending on the color, will brighten or intensify the other colors. Or we can just keep it normal, and maybe just bring it down just a little bit. So from there, we can create, you know, this is just a very simple example of compositing. You know, adding different layers, adding different effects to these images. Any questions so far? Okay. And the thing is, we can also do this to the petals using selection tools. We can change the colors of these petals. So if I hide this layer and I take my, where is that selection tool? There is a, give me 1 second. Okay, there was a, no. So here we have a free select tool. All right, let's fix this real quick. Hold on. All right. So we can change the color of the petals using a selection tool. So here we have a free select. There's also a lazy select option, which allows you to select an array of colors or items. So using the select tool, we can trace around these images like so. And we're just doing this really loose and tight. You can adjust this, to be much neater, but for demonstration purposes, this will work. We come in, and once we've connected that, where's that? And then here you can see, well, it's kind of hard to tell. Let me see if I can zoom in just a little bit. If you see this little line here that's right, when I click off of it, it's kind of buzzing a little bit. That's our live selection. So now if I come over here and let's create a new layer. And we'll just call it layer just to keep it there. We can actually come in, we'll pick a different color, use our brush, and we'll paint. Well, we'll paint this petal a different color. And using a layer effect, we can alter that color in a variety of ways. So like here you have multiplied. That way we preserve our shadows, we preserve the overall effect and the overall lighting of the image, but now we've changed that petal from white to blue. And we can turn down that intensity using our opacity tool. And we can do that in a number, for all these petals, you can do that same action if you want. And then we can come over here, we can make it pink if we want. So, okay. Paintbrush tool, and we can paint that over. And again, remember with the opacity and setting our layer, we can always adjust the intensity of these objects. And that way you can manipulate this image in any way. You can also cut out these petals if you want and just leave the center. We can Photoshop it to where the stem is behind, this petal is behind the stem. So there's a lot of different options available to you when you're doing this sort of photo manipulation. It's kind of up to you to do what you want and to be able to play around with the tools and just kind of see what it is you want to do to composite. So, any questions so far? Feel free to speak up anytime. Okay. So now I'll show you another, we'll get into something like color correction. So let's say we'll copy this again. And here we have a photo of an eye. Okay. So we'll paste this in here. Tell it to create a new layer. That way it drops it as a pasted layer. We'll come over here to our transformation tool. Click it. And this time, because it's smaller than the eye, we'll increase the size. And we'll drop it in here. So we'll come around before. We'll increase the size of the erase tool. And we'll take away the edging. Make that a little bigger. We'll take away the edging. And you don't have to be neat. You know, this is just something to have fun with. But now if we come over here to our layer options, and we do lighten, you can see we get the reflection from the eye. So now that, and then if we bring down that opacity a little bit, sorry, go back to lighten. If we bring that opacity down just a little bit, now it looks like we can see the city in this person's eye. Now from here, we can create a new layer. And this will be on the layer that we adjust on. So if we'll come over here to colors, and we can adjust things like the curves. And this is almost like your level. So this helps us adjust the, sorry, I'm thinking Photoshop. GIMP works on its actual layer. So if we want to adjust this eye, say the tones or the skin, so we'll come over here, we can adjust the curves. We can actually adjust the brightness and the darkness of the shadows of the eye, of the background. And this is part of what we do for color correction. We can also adjust the hue and saturation. So this is our intensities. So if we want to convert it, say, to black and white, we can completely cut out the saturation so that the only thing that's highlighted in color is the eye, which will help draw the audience to what your main focus is, which would be what this person is seeing. And these are some of the tools that I use day to day in Photoshop, photo manipulation, doing portraits, adjusting lighting, compositing, or say if someone has a blemish, say if they have a scratch on the face or something like that, using the heal tool, using the color correction, gets rid of a lot of those things. So that's really a lot of what I wanted to show you. That's a lot in the form of just the basic compositing, cutting out objects, pasting them, blending them into other images, stacking some of your layers. And so now that kind of gives you a very basic overview of photo manipulation in GIMP. And the same thing applies to a larger tool like Photoshop or Krita or even, I guess, your Paint application would have some tools similar to this. So are there any questions so far? Has anyone tried to follow along and do this as I'm doing this? Anybody? Feel free to unmute. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Jaden, I tried to do that. But Jaden, can you unmute your mic and tell me what issues you were having?
I did not know how to do that.
What exactly?
It was confusing when you, because I didn't know where those controls were.
You didn't know where the controls were?
Well, I don't know how you act. I don't know how you act. I don't know how you put this stuff, and I don't know how you put the image into that eye.
Okay. Okay. So let's go over it one more time. So here we have the panoramic image that we turned into a small planet. Okay. So we came over here with our selection tool. We drag that over our selection. So now we're coming over here, we'll edit, copy. We'll come over here to our other image. I'll turn off that one we pasted. And we'll do edit, paste. Now from there, if you go to your layer editor over here, where it says floating selection, pasted layer number 1, down at the bottom left, it says create new layer and add it to the image. We'll click that button and now it will drop it as a layer. From there, we go to our general manipulation tool, or our unified transformation tool is what they call it. We'll click on that image and we'll scale that image to cover the eye. Like so. Does that make some sense so far, Jaden?
Yes.
Okay. Were you able to do that?
I was close.
Close?
Yeah, but I accidentally closed the image.
Okay. Okay. So we'll go over it one more time. Okay. Just so we have it, so that we've gone through everything in the process to be able to do this basic composition. And what I'll do is I'll just start this over real quick. We've got a few minutes left. Let's see if we can make the most of it real quick. So let me open up this image again, the panoramic image. So here's our panoramic image. We go to Filter, Map, Little Planet. From here we can pan, zoom, tilt, manipulate our image however we want to. Say okay. I'll zoom in. We'll come over here to the healing brush. We'll select that. We'll adjust our size as we need. We'll sample a part of the image, and that will allow us to blend this part of the image away so that we don't see a seam. We'll increase this size. to pan over here. Let me decrease that just a little bit. We'll sample the image again, and we'll blend this seam away. And the more you do this, the neater you'll get. Obviously I'm just doing this rather quickly, but normally I would spend a couple of hours on this to make it look seamless. So like the city would somehow blend this way, and this bridge would somehow blend this way so that you didn't see this sharp cut. So from here, we'll take our selection tool. We'll move it center to the object. We'll copy over here to the eye, paste, drop it as a layer. We'll come over here, we'll manipulate this again to pan over the eye just a little bit, like so. Then what we'll do is we'll erase the edges. We'll increase the size here. We'll just gently erase the edges. I'll increase that size a little more. We'll take away the edges. And from here, we'll blend this in with the other layer, like so. That way we get the highlight from the eye. You'll still see the iris of the eye. We'll turn this opacity down, this layer down just a little bit. And that's our basic composition. Okay, did that make sense for everyone? Okay, we're almost wrapping up here. Are there any questions? Okay, is there any subject that you guys specifically want to cover in our next class? Feel free to put it in the chat or unmute your mic. We can go over more photo manipulation. We can start talking about video editing. We can start talking about making vector-based graphics. We can go over drawing or photography. Okay. So I will choose the next subject for the next class. I hope that tutorial made a lot of sense. If you would like to try it out on your own time, and if you have any issues, feel free to reach out. You can let Martin know, or you can let myself know in the class. I'll be checking it throughout the next couple of days. So if there's anything you're stuck on, or if you're trying to do your own project that you're having an issue with, feel free to let me know. I'll be happy to walk you through and help you out in any way I can. And if not, that's the end of the class. I hope you guys have a good evening and enjoy the rest of your week.
Bye, guys.